with the evolution of technology and with the evolution of our space, the line between a performance and digital marketer and a sales and business development person, in my opinion, becomes thinner every single day. And as that line becomes thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, it makes sense that compensation and that investment begins to shift for the marketer.
Welcome to the season 2 ending episode of Marketing Matchup. As is our tradition, our finale of each season is a super session, bringing together 4 previous guests from the season who haven't guested with each other before to dive deeper on the issues that marketers all over the wealth and investment management industry are wrestling with. I'm genuinely excited to have this mix of thoughtful marketers here with us today. Let me go around the horn and introduce everyone. First, we have Ryan, CMO at Cerity Partners. We have Meghan McCartan, who's a newly appointed CMO at Composition Wealth. Justin Barish is Chief Marketing Officer at Lido Advisors. And of course, Jack Casady, who's the Head of Marketing at Beck, Bode. Although all 4 firms have different geographic hubs and vary in size, it's actually kind of a coincidence that today's guests all hail from New York and New England. So we'll call it an East Coast bias for this season 2 finale. So before we jump into the tactics and the topics, I want to zoom out for a moment and frame why this discussion matters right now. One thing that stands out immediately. So Tara, she's been in her role since 2023, but Jack, Meghan, and Justin were all appointed to their roles within the last 12 months. 3 firms at very different stages and sizes of evolution, all made the decision recently to elevate marketing leadership. To me, that's not a coincidence. It suggests that across the RIA landscape, firms are hitting an inflection point where marketing is no longer a support function and no longer just lead generation. I mean, if any of you have heard or read my stuff on LinkedIn, I've been beating the drum about talent and empowering marketing. The arrival of the 3 new hires in your roles is just more evidence of that. As we look at it, it's becoming more about just having people. It's about having the architecture that's becoming the infrastructure. And then in the end, you all are helping put together the strategy to really raise marketing to where it is. So let's talk about what this means and what I'd love for us to explore today. What's changed? Why now? Why are firms bucking up and putting people in these seats right now? What does it signal to us all that firms of all different scales and sizes have all decided that they need to appoint people like you in these roles? The other thing I want to consider is that 3 out of the 4 firms represented here, so you have Tara at Cerity and Justin at Lido and Meghan at Composition, have a defined history of acquisition and integration. You've all grown not only organically, but through bringing advisors and firms together under a unified brand. That, to me, introduced another dynamic. When inorganic growth is running hot, like we've all seen it every day, every week, we've all seen M&A in the news, I think it puts a lot of pressure on organic growth. How do you feel about that? Let's talk about that today. And to me, I think in a lot of ways, marketing has become the glue as firms look to grow and expand and build scale. It could be in the accelerator as well in some ways when you think about how to make good on an investment made in an acquisition. So anyway, with that, we'll dive into that a bit. And then, of course, there's more to it, right? Marketers have never had more technological influence in their day-to-day work lives. Obviously, AI has been a big topic. I think we're arguably living through the most powerful expansion of marketing capability in decades. AI has dramatically increased speed, scale, and efficiency. One marketer can now do the work of, 10, 15, depending on what AI tools you're using. And I think content production has never been easier. But I think at the same time, some of you in your notes talked about it isn't just the volume of content, it's the quality, it's personalization, the human touch of it. So anyway, that's something we want to get into today. A couple of you in your notes also talked about how strategic events and in person has really been working. There's been a lot of upside. I think one of you even said that strategic events are crushing it and has outsized ROI. We'll talk about that why, especially in the face of all this new technology. The human touch really does matter. So as we go through all this, I'm hoping we can explore the intersection of why marketing leadership is rising now, how firms that are balancing organic and inorganic growth pressure are dealing with this all, and whether the future of RA marketing is as much about the technology tools or the humanity piece. So anyway, with that, let's dive in. I know there's a big setup, everybody, but I want to make sure we frame it because there's a lot to cover with this group. So as we go into it, let's start this way. Justin, you led us off with season 1. Reintroduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about your background, what your perspective is on the world of marketing.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joe. Super excited to be back on the podcast. I had a lot of fun in the first episode, so super excited to be back for the closer as well. My name is Justin Barish. I'm the Chief Marketing and Chief Digital Officer at Lido Advisors. Lido Advisors is a 40-some-odd billion-dollar RIA based in Los Angeles, and I have been focused on digital marketing and lead generation in the RIA space, focused on high net worth and ultra high net worth exclusively for the last 13 or so years. And it's a really nice surprise and a really nice pleasure to be with Tara, who is my former boss and colleague at Cerity Partners.
Very cool. That's your turn, Tara. A nice lead in, Justin.
Yeah. Hello, Justin. Thanks so much, Joe, for having me back. It was a lot of fun the first time. Tara Ryan, CMO at Cerity Partners. I've been in the role for 2.5 years now. It feels like much, much longer. Spent most of my career in the corporate world at Goldman Sachs and the nonprofit space. And, it's been a wild ride. And a lot of the topics that you just mentioned, we've been dealing with. And some of those Justin and I have dealt with together. And so excited to dig in.
Awesome. Well, let's go to Jack next for the intro.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on, Joe. It's great to be here and meet some new faces. Jack Casady joined Beck Bode about a year ago now to run their marketing efforts, both on the client side and advisor succession and integration side.
Sure. So correct. Last time I was on the show, I was still hunting for an opportunity. I am now the Chief Marketing Officer for Composition Wealth. Been there a month. Just got back last night from first board meeting. And kind of, Joe, the way you were just talking about how firms are really leaning into realizing they need marketing, that is the number one priority for the firm this year. So it's kind of amazing to be there. Everybody saying every single person saying we are so happy that you are here, and recognizing in different levels how important it was to have marketing. It's a giant step forward. My background is before that. I've been in wealth management marketing my whole career and was just at Hightower for 5 years prior to Composition. So that's where I'm coming from.
Well, and that's terrific. And I was personally excited. And for those of you that don't know, Meghan shared with me recently that her co-guest for the marketing matchup ended up joining her team as well.
Wow.
So that's literally a true marketing mashup if you ever saw one. So it's always fun to see that happen. And again, more to Meghan's point about the empowerment of marketing is a big deal. And I think time and time again, the question of stepping up into marketing, empowering marketing leadership has come up a lot on stages here in conversations with people prepping for this podcast. And so we'll start today's discussion around that. I feel in a lot of ways, when you start seeing the headlines, where now even CMO moves or CMO departures are headlines in the trade pubs that used to be reserved just for deals, it tells you a lot. So let's talk about this question now. So 3 of you are newly appointed roles last year. Tara, it's not like your ancient history at Cerity. It's been 3 years basically coming up, right? So look, what is going on? What are you seeing on the front lines? And Tara, since you've been in your seat the longest, I'll let you answer it first. But what do you think it is that's coalescing around this march to C-level status for the marketing role?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, look, I think there's a couple ways to attack that question. For the larger RIAs, I think the marketing function is dual-hatted in that we are responsible for bringing business into the firm and we're responsible for helping other parts of the business accelerate. And I don't feel like that has been around that long. And so seeing marketing with its own P&L and its own source of revenue growth, I think, is really refreshing, but I'm not sure I think that's a little bit new. And so I think firms are looking around and seeing that the firms with kind of more built out marketing teams where they're really giving the marketing team space to grow and bring business in are doing well. And so I think there's a little bit of FOMO, a little bit of like seeing that and wanting to replicate it. And then I think the other piece, and you mentioned sort of the inorganic growth, and we've talked about this, but we merge with a lot of incredible firms, but they really have grown through referral. And so you really need that extra support system for them as they come into a larger ecosystem on how to leverage sales, on how to grow in a different way. And without that, right, they probably would plateau. And so bringing them into the ecosystem and allowing them to avail themselves of all the things we have to offer, you kind of need a marketing function to help them do that. And so kind of those are the two big things that come to mind for me.
It makes a lot of sense. And I'll flip it to Meghan here, because you're coming out from a different end, right? You're walking in, building things from scratch. Tara came from a team where, Justin was actually part of the team, and he's a CMO in his own right. And so there are what I call the haves and have-nots in some cases. Like when you think about the catalyst, the coming of age moment, the deciding factor that led your firm to bring you in, what are some of the underlying dynamics you're observing that sort of has made this sort of, I would call a centerpiece of 2026, as you said, for your firm?
I think composition's leaning highly into organic growth. It's, there are two growth goals between both inorganic and organic, but leaning highly into organic growth and understanding that can only come with a really robust marketing function. And also that inorganic growth relies on organic growth as well. Like you have to be able to tell an organic growth story in order to be able to get that inorganic growth. I think also going back to something that Tara said, it's also a recognition of the professionalization of that marketing function. I work really closely with our CFO. So it's not just marketing over in a corner there, that department on the other floor. We're tying in what we're doing with actual, it can't just be anecdotal results. We're tying it into real KPIs. And I think that means a lot more than just having a great story to tell. It's actual results to show. And that's where it starts to matter a lot more.
And I think, well, of course, having results show. And I think you actually hit on something that is always in the back of my mind. I feel like somewhere called 2023, I'll make up that up, but it kind of feels like 3 years ago, the mindset around marketing was shifting from an expense to an investment, if you follow, right? And so I feel like as firms caught up with the idea that, we need to invest in marketing, then they said, who's going to manage this investment, right? And so composition is a fairly large scale firm. Remind me again what the total AUM is, Meghan?
We're at 11, growing to 20.
So you think about that, right? So 11 billion just 5-10 years ago was an aspirational number for most firms out there, right? And there's probably tons of firms of your size now. That's a good size operation. Let's look at Jack, because he's on the upper end of the spectrum. He's probably come from the smallest size firm represented here in today's panel, right? But they have the gumption to bring you in to run marketing. And that says a lot about a focus of a firm of that size, of a different ambition. What do you think was the catalyst?
Yeah, so they kind of followed up a year prior saying, we want to track over to $1 billion, and how are we really going to do it? They had worked historically with a bunch of agencies that, would do well for a set amount of time, and then, they'd fade off, or the people you love to work with didn't work there anymore. And they realized as they acquired 3 other firms within New England, okay, we can't connect all these things together and expect an agency to do it. So I was brought in here to kind of centralize a home office model while also supporting our other offices up in New Hampshire and Traverse City and equip those advisors with the tools to sell and convert and market themselves, while also helping the 2 lead founding advisors. They started the firm about 13 years ago to be able to do a lot more with their time. So I am sitting in the studio we built within here because we have a big bet on video, but also finding a way to integrate all these different stories and pieces to tell the best story forward. And Meghan, as you brought up earlier, right? It's that inorganic and organic story threading together. You're not going to get that inorganic motion if you're not having the organic growth on the other side. You need to have both together. So it's great to be here and build that from scratch.
And I think it's phenomenal what your firm has done, Jack, in terms of just giving you some of the apparatus to do your job and really go bet all in on video. Justin, let's switch to you. I know they didn't hire you just to run wine tastings for the firm. So and frankly, I think obviously the stature that Cerity had built up probably was an attraction point to bring in someone like you. But I remember our conversations from the previous time you were on. It gave me some interesting background. But let's get into it a little bit here. Like, what do you think the catalyst point is in terms of why you were hired when you were, and sort of how is the ambition for marketing and frankly the digital pieces that your title includes evolved since you got settled in?
Yeah, certainly. Traditionally, and probably even in current times, the highest compensated people at a firm like ours are business development people, salespeople, people who are ringing the cash register. And with the evolution of technology and with the evolution of our space, the line between a performance and digital marketer and a sales and business development person, in my opinion, becomes thinner every single day. And as that line becomes thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, it makes sense that compensation and that investment begins to shift for the marketer, because we as marketers can operate at a level of scale and efficiency that is very different from the traditional business development person.
Well, I love that. And actually, when I read your notes, you mentioned about that line getting thinner. I feel that's so true. But that's also allowed firms, as I said a moment ago, to shift from the what are we spending on marketing to what are we investing in marketing. I think that's, you start looking at that standpoint. It makes a lot of sense where there's a real justification and a mindset shift. Let's go back to the other topic I mentioned in the preamble a little bit about there is something that's come up again, time and time again. I'm asked this question. I ask it because I'm curious to see what people say. There has to be sort of this like hand in hand, like a tug of war that comes up because when you have these big pushes around inorganic growth. And Jack's firm, you've done a couple acquisitions, but it's obviously nowhere near the frequency as Cerity, for example, right? But all the firms have played quite a bit. And I think, all right, well, when you have this tension where you say one thing almost has to serve to justify the other, how does that change the dynamics? And Jack, I'll start with you here. It's like, what pressure do you feel when it comes to like bringing these groups together? Is it about the forward growth, or is it about bringing the current people together? And sometimes,
yeah, I think there's always that kind of tug of war tension that you're always going to have, because you always want, of course, those succession opportunities or those acquisition opportunities to kind of keep consistently ringing your door. But if you don't have the other parallel playing out, it probably won't lead to the most successful hit rate of those going through. And so often it's a lot of conversations of, okay, this is the plan and cadence we're going to take on the advisor side, and this is how through the client and investor side we're going to help supplement that. We're going to tell a different story. We're going to help that growth trajectory there, so that if we both focus down those lanes, they really complement one another. And 3 months, 6 months, a year later, you go, okay, that was worth it, right? Because I think it's always hard working with advisors where they want to close every prospect now. That's not always the case. If you can make it happen, we're always going to make it happen. And so within marketing, we all face it, right? There's long-term plays that aren't going to, bring ROI in 3 months. We know that. A lot of advisors don't know that. And so getting them excited about those opportunities to close deals, win new business, and then say, okay, you sat down with an advisor, they're really excited about that. And you can talk about what the pipeline is going to be a year, 5 years, 10 years from now. That's a really exciting place to be. So that tension just brings a lot of progress, because you can really hear that, okay, what are you really concerned about here? Is it organic growth? Is it not getting in front of enough advisors? Is it not growing, these books in this office enough? Like, let's figure out these problems and let's solve them in the best way to supplement both lanes.
I think that's a good mindset and approach, Jack. And I want to flip it to Tara here for a second. So Tara's been in her seat the longest of everyone in this group. And I'm curious, Tara, as you look at this potential tension between the push around organic growth and marketing versus the inorganic side, how has that changed in your close to 3 years on the job? Has there been a shift in mindset at all? Have you seen a different approach or different thoughtfulness around where marketing shows up in that process?
It's such a good question. When I joined, and I'm very open about this, and I've probably said it to Justin a million times, when I joined, the merger environment was new for me, and it really knocked me on my ass for the first 6 months. Right? Traditional marketing all day long, merger environment marketing, I just had never been exposed to it before. And look, I think it has evolved really meaningfully, because with every single one we do, we get better. And so what we were doing 2.5 years ago is vastly different in terms of the support system that we extend to firms merging in, to the advisors that are coming in. I would say it looks 180 degrees different, because every single one we learn something and we take it away and we post-mortem, and we don't make those same mistakes again, and we continue to improve the process. I think, giving them a Sherpa, right? Every single firm gets someone from our team that stays with them through the process. That's changed. how integrated they are with all of the marketing tools and resources. We meet with them so much more than we ever used to. But really, when they join, they know who their go-to person is for the first year. We call it day 2. And so I think that's really helped them kind of come in grounded and be able to hit the ground running. So, I mean, yes, I could talk all day in terms of how we've evolved the process. But I think the through line is continuous improvement every single time we do it.
And then I want to bridge to Justin, because he sort of sat shotgun with you for part of that time, but also I know his firm has an acquisition history. What do you think like the learnings are from that when it comes to, I'm going to look at this question with you, Justin. There's 2 sides of it, right? One side is you get this group or team or business bolted back into your business, and now you want to endow them with the same level of marketing sophistication that the core firm has and get them but there's also what I would call the morale or assimilation, where it's like, hey, everyone's on the same team, we're all wearing the same uniform. Where does that sort of fit in the process of onboarding them in the first 6 months versus longer term? Is there a transition in terms of the role you think marketing plays in the acquisition game?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in my 15-ish years of working with advisors, I distill my take on what's important to an advisor down to 2 very simple and very specific things. Advisors want to, number 1, first and foremost, always make more money. And number 2, better serve their clients. And marketing is a beautiful collaborator and partner in achieving both of these objectives. For 9 years in my career, my job was to turn advisors into CEOs. For the last 5-6 years, it's been to turn CEOs into advisors. Totally different trajectory, and both are really interesting for really different reasons. But when we're talking about M&A and when we're talking about consolidation, we're talking about turning CEOs into advisors. The reason that they're making these transactions, the reason that they're doing these deals is because they want to better service their clients. They don't want to focus on building record types in CRM systems and running books and records and doing compliance and doing HR. They want to work with their clients and they want to grow their book of business, right? To be more financially successful. So when we work with these merger candidates, it's a really with these merger candidates or these successful mergers, it's a really delicate balance, because in a lot of these instances, these were folks that were CEOs of their own firm for 10, 20, 30. I've worked with folks who were CEOs for 45 years before they made this transition. And the psychology of that shift is dramatic. And brand is a collection of experience over time. That 45 years of being a CEO is a pretty rich collection of experience over time. And that's a massive change to go from being in complete control of your brand and your firm to being an employee. And the merger or the acquisition is only successful if that firm grows. So if that advisor comes in and they're in a bad mood because they can't do the things that they were doing for 45 years that they really like to do, they're not going to be hungry and they're not going to grow. And for that reason, it's not going to be a successful merger. So the integration piece is essential, just like any first impression is essential, because it allows them to understand that they're going to have access to resources and capabilities that are on a totally different plane and tier than what they had prior. And that this access, if they're willing to be open-minded about it, will allow them to better service their clients, grow their book of business, and be much more financially successful.
Justin, I love that nugget you mentioned a second ago about brand as a collection of experiences over time. We're going to come back to that in a second, but I want to hear Meghan. So Meghan, I know this question might be a little different for you to answer since you're weeks on the job, right? But I think your situation is fascinating. You have a new CMO and a company that, as a brand, that's not even 2 years old in terms of composition, rebranded from Miracle Mile, if those of you might not have followed that. And so I feel in a lot of ways like this question around balancing the mission of marketing in support of inorganic growth and assimilating versus the other aspirations of organic growth how do you begin prioritizing? I mean, I'm sure you're drinking from a fire hose right now, but you think about that, knowing the history of the firm, not only the inorganic and organic side, but also the rebrand. I feel like there's a lot of prioritization needs to get done, making sure that these two thrusts of growth can play nicely together while you're still building something in terms of overall function. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. And I draw on my experience of coming from a firm dealing with a lot of mergers and a lot of acquisitions all the time. And I think, yes, it was a rebrand, but we're still like compositions building on like a very strong culture that it had for a long time. So it's kind of just re-upping that culture. I actually heard your question a little bit differently at the beginning, Joe. And I sort of have been thinking about it as how do you prioritize marketing for organic and inorganic? Like which do you prioritize at any given time? I would say the greatest failures for marketing departments that I have seen are when things silo. That is where things go down fast. So where I would say like you can't silo and just say we're going to focus now on organic. We're going to focus on inorganic. Like it has to be woven really tightly together. Our biggest inorganic wins used to be when folks came in asking, we're reading about what you're doing in marketing, or we're hearing from others what you're doing in marketing. We want to be able to be a part of it. So those efforts go together. And I think that, so then you're not necessarily prioritizing everything we're doing in organic. It's all like it's a common effort, and in a new team is brought in directly into everything that we're doing for this organic growth. And that's really the way, as we're building getting that culture that was so amazing about the old Miracle Mile, which is just, we're a partner, we're the people you want to be able to talk to. That hasn't changed. We're just making sure that folks understand composition is who these folks are. And that's as people come along to the new piece. So again, it's just, the silos are fast failures. So making sure that doesn't happen.
Fast failures. I think more than one of you had the comment in your notes for this, actually talking about like failing fast and uncovering like what's going to work in your environment and where you need to be. And so I think that's a big part of it. We were talking a little bit about the maturation and marketing coming of age in some ways, all these firms hiring folks like yourselves to run. Well, there's still so much trial and error that needs to happen to figure out what's going to work in your specific environment, what's going to work for attracting advisors, what's going to work for attracting clients for the firm. And so I'm glad you used that phrase, Meghan, the fast failures, because it's very much still, I feel like, almost the lifeblood of a good marketer is figuring out, okay, what's going to fit for me right now, especially with all these new tools coming at us, right? So let's talk a little bit about something adjacent to this, which is the idea that M&A, obviously growth trust. We brought that up in the context of how much pressure is there on traditional marketing and organic growth when you have a hot M&A growth cycle. I actually heard a great anecdote from a previous guest on the pod who he simply said, the best outcomes from an M&A standpoint come when the seller got strong organic growth and a strong marketing plan, and when the buyer does, right? Both sides of the equation, it has to happen. And so we think about it's actually, in a lot of ways, should be a symbiotic relationship where you have organizations that have that mindset coming together, recognizing that to justify existence, you have to have that growth approach. So that leads to the next piece of it, right? In our previous conversations, all of you touched on the advisor role in our previous conversations together, and so around where does the advisor and advisor enablement pick up on things, and this is something else that comes up a lot. So I want to touch on this with this group here. We talk about the idea of creating guardrails or frameworks so advisors can have a game plan to work with. At the same time, there's probably a real need to allow them to be humans and build relationships. And Justin, I was interested in your comments there. So when you think about the extending marketing to advisors, what's your approach? How much marketing freedom should advisors have? Let's start there.
Yeah, for me, it's like way less about how much freedom or what tools they should have. And it's way more about what is the objective and what is the reason for giving them freedom or tools. And I have an explicit, clear answer for this. In my opinion and in my experience, the objective and the key result of empowering the advisor is to first and foremost drive retention, because if you're losing business, gaining business doesn't matter. it's steady. So use marketing to create fascinating, high-end, compliant, on-brand, scalable touch points and experiences across all of the channels, digital and traditional. So first off, they're not losing clients, but really what they're doing, if we look at McKinsey's customer decision journey, is they're converting clients from advocates, because clients don't refer business, advocates do, and that becomes an organic growth engine. So in my experience and in my opinion, advisor marketing is just about that. It's about converting these clients into evangelists that are now referring business. And I completely agree with Meghan's point, right, in one dimension about not having silos, because having a strong brand, right, is going to be really helpful in doing that, as well as doing M&A, as well as doing more performance marketing and digital marketing. But I do think the line, right, I do think there is a line. I am not from a school of thought where I am trying to work with advisors to run 401, 501, 601 level sophisticated performance marketing campaigns. I would prefer to do that from the home office and from the central office. Go out and take the bluefin tuna fishing boat out into the deep waters, right, into the seas that the advisors have never sailed in before, and to fish for them. Tell me what a great fish looks like for you. Tell me how you want it to be prepared. It's my job to deliver that for you. And when these two things work together, teaching them how to fish, to create these super meaningful client relationships that turn into evangelism and referrals, plus the open water fishing using the 501, 601 level tactics, the super sophisticated digital marketing, it's a really complete composition of growth.
I like the way you frame that, the idea of tell me what kind of fish you want to eat, and I'll go catch it for you. I think the idea that there's two sizes, right?
And Joe, you'll maybe pay me for it too.
Yeah,
seriously, right? That's a different thing. An advisor going out and getting their own business, an advisor being handed a warm prospect that's ready to go, that's already known everything about the firm. Those are two different things. You go to a restaurant, you pay two different prices for those two experiences. And I think that's something to note in our space today.
Well, and it goes to your point earlier about the line thinning between marketing and business development, right? And I think, and making sure the alignment, and again, you talk about how you get paid as a marketer, right? If you're closer to that delivery of revenue, you have a bigger price tag on what you bring to the table. So
the smart advisors get this, and they buy in, and they're the ones that want to ring the cash register with you, right? It's such a nice collaboration.
So Jack, when you think about that, and what you're doing, I obviously see some of the content you put forward, and I see both Beck and Bode on LinkedIn doing content, and they're the name brands of the firm. But how does the advisor connection happen in how you stack marketing at your firm?
I think it's a great question, right? Because it's two parallels. As you have two founders that started the firm and built that culture, and then as you brought in other advisors underneath that through M&A deals, right? They now assume that cultural fit of, well, these are the two founders, but what's my role within it, and how do I both? Justin, I loved your point about you need to work on client retention, because you could grow all you want, but if that AUM stripping at the other side, you're at best net zero, right? And so for really them, it's okay, you either lost your head advisor or now you're stepping into the role of owning that book. So how can we equip you to be the most confident, the best foot forward, get in front of those clients, maybe build those relationships to say, okay, seriously, I'm the lead advisor. Right? I'm going to help you. I'm going to be an
advisor going out and getting their own business
for you.
An advisor being
and then how can we help support
warm
you in the places
ready
you feel
to go,
most confident?
That's already known everything.
I think
about
often
those are two different
work with
things.
advisors and you could say,
go to a restaurant,
hey, this is what I'm going to do for you. I think this is a great fit. This has worked 10,000 other times. Just do X, Y, Z, and you'll see that. And then you work with an advisor and they go, well, this doesn't really fit me, or I don't really like to think about this way, or I'm not really in this space. And I think people can really tell that. And so for me, it's sitting down with each advisor and going, okay, where are you really passionate? Where are you the most confident, right? Justin, your example about tell me the fish you want and I'll bring it back. Like, if you're not happy with the open ocean, we can work on a smaller vessel. That's okay, because that's going to help you reach those goals.
And they
versus
buy
putting
in,
out in the open ocean, going,
and they're the
well,
ones
this should
that want to
work.
ring the cash
Don't you feel
register with
confident?
you,
That's
right?
not
That's a
as
nice
successful,
collaboration.
right? And so it's building up that brand. And what does Beck Bode mean now that we are a lot more people? While also equipping those advisors with the tools to be successful in the spaces they are most successful. And then how at the home office level can you create those opportunities for Ben and Jim are the two founders to be that big figurehead, that big cultural center point, and then support the other advisors there to be present and to hand off those leads, hand off that trust, and go, have you met this individual yet? They're fantastic. You should have a meeting with them, right? Building off of, okay, maybe you need to transition from, 50% CEO, 50% advisor instead of all advisor, right? How do you build that out?
And Jack, I think when you talk about the question of how do you build that out, my mind keeps going back to Meghan because she's living that experience of building something out right now. And so Meghan, I think if I'm not mistaken here, you're the only one on this pod that actually was a CMO at a firm before your current job in terms of within the wealth management space, right? And I know all of you had other roles within marketing and so forth, but you actually worked at Hightower, right? Mm-hmm. And their model then when you're working there has even changed now. I'm curious to see what are the learnings from these multiple stops in your career in terms of how to engage advisors in marketing, and how do you think it'll take shape at composition? And knowing full well you're still baking that a little bit right now, being a month in, but I'm curious to see someone in your shoes who's had that experience before. What are the best practices? How do you think it should play out in terms of where the enterprise leads the marketing versus where the advisors pick up?
Yeah, I'm on record of being such a strong believer in content marketing and making it personal. And I draw a kind of from both what Jack and Justin were talking about, maybe a little bit less fish oriented, and just saying getting as much content out there as possible, and then letting the advisor figure out how they want to use it. You cannot go do a book and a podcast and a video series. A, it's not possible. You don't have the time. And B, if you're not comfortable doing a podcast, guess how long you're going to do it? 0. You're not going to do it. You're going to make yourself miserable. And those are conversations I had over and over at Hightower, and it a little bit rinse and repeat. I had that same conversation the other day at Composition, and I was talking to one of our advisors who does a tremendous job, and she's like, I really, I got into this niche just because I love caring, and maybe that sounds a little bit trite, but I bring this caring personality and I'm working with divorcees, but it's from this perspective. And I said, well, then that's the way you approach it. Make it natural to yourself. And she's like, well, then if I'm approaching it that way, then I feel a lot better making a lot more posts. Right. Because it's how you want to be able to come. It's the way the way you want to be able to appear. So I think getting all that content out there, but then making sure it's really genuine to the way you want to approach it. And I take that one step further, because the thing I learned where we really want to be able to help is with this next generation of advisors who aren't going to be able to grow their books the way their predecessors did, right? That's where, and going back to the Sherpa, we have amazing advisors. Brock founded, one of the founders of Miracle Mile, who's still a major player at Composition. He is there and ready and understanding. He built an amazing book, and he wants to be able to help the next gen figure out a different way to market, and it has to be really genuine to them. So going back to the very genesis of this question, what do I believe in? Just getting content out there, and it has to be really life content, not what's a 401k. Google that. But let me tell you, how to be able to connect with aging parents and give you really resources to be able to start those conversations. It's personal, it's conversational, and that's what I think is really the differentiator.
Well, and Meghan, you talk about the personal and conversational, and I'm sort of bridging something that Justin said and what you're saying there, is that the idea for an advisor's role in marketing, at least how I hear Justin talk about what you're saying there, is that I feel like if you divide marketing up into what I would call the relationship-driven marketing that touches this time spent with people versus the digital strategies, the performance marketing, lead gen, the advisor should, by nature, already be naturally good at some of those things from the standpoint of if you're a successful advisor, you probably know how to talk to people, probe for what they care about in life, what their pain points are, and be able to respond to that, and then bake in sort of the client experience in a way that meets that, which becomes
maybe
you should be, right? But but to your point, Meghan, that I do feel like, particularly that people have come of age professionally or socially the last 5 or 10 years, this big COVID disruption. I'm not so sure as many people are used to being collegial and talking and probing and that way.
Right.
If you were just getting started in the financial services world at 24 and the world shuts down, and those formative years where all of us made a lot of connections, were out and about, all of a sudden evaporated. Do you have the same capability, that emotional IQ, whatever, to do that? So anyway, I just think it's interesting knowing, we all know that if you can show some empathy and show some connection, you're likely to resonate with somebody, but it's skills that have to be cultivated a little differently now because let's jump to Tara, because Tara, I think you have the size of that Cerity has grown to, right? I'm sure you see all different kinds of advisors in that realm, some of which are probably great accomplices and understand the role of marketing, and some need a lot of hand-holding. How do you navigate that, right? And what are some of the things, like how do you best empower and equip them, but at the same time recognize there might be some limitations, and build a system that can work across the whole enterprise?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm a huge fan of structure. And when new firms merge in, I talk to them about sort of the 3 levels of marketing. You have sort of the corporate air cover level, you have local marketing or practice marketing, and then you have individual brand or individual marketing, like how you show up for your clients and how you show up for the people that you're trying to bring into the firm. And my belief is that at the corporate level, we should be doing things and taking things off their plate that we're just more efficient at doing. And to Justin's point, it doesn't make sense for every advisor to be deploying their each individual SEO strategies. It makes more institutional sense for us to be doing it at that corporate level. So any place, any tactic that's just simply more efficient for us to deploy, we should be doing at that top level. Where we really come together with the advisors, though, is how they want to show up in that kind of middle level. How do they want to be boots on the ground in their local market? How do they want to think about showing up on LinkedIn? And you're right, it's not one size fits all. But we have been establishing what we call these foundational blocks to give every practice and every advisor a place to start. And they are all starting from different places. But what we're seeing is that they're really gravitating towards this sense of, get your foundational blocks in order, and then you can graduate from that a little bit. And we're there to help them do that when they're ready. Some of them are like, give me my integrated marketing plan today. And we have a solution for that too. But some of them just need to get comfortable with the basics. And so being really nimble, depending on where they are, is something that we're doing, We're channel switching all day long.
Well, and I'm sure it only gets more and more complicated as you have different needs in different markets, and be able to toggle back and forth. I can only imagine a level of sophistication and follow-up and that needs to happen to make sure keeping folks on track like that. So this brings up another question. All of your firms have assimilated some deals within, some more than others, but at the same time, when you talk about that, part of that's going scale, right? And at a certain point in scale, you're telling people, hey, we could do this at the top so you don't have to. So some of the things that Justin was talking about, for example, but this is more of a jump ball question. And anyone chime in when you hear this. So I'm not sure if anyone will have an opinion, but do you think there's more of a risk when you allow for customization in marketing, or more of a risk if you don't allow risk? Because I can answer it both ways. I'm curious to see what I mean by that. So you set up a system, but within the system, you've seen certain firms will have like a main website for the firm, but you can have the Topeka office for Joe Anthony Financial, or the New Jersey office for Joe Anthony Financial, things like that, where at a certain point advisors can break off and do their own thing. What's the feeling? Is it more of a risk to allow for that level of sophistication for the brand, or is it more of a risk to not allow for it, maybe not be personable enough? Anyone have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I have a strong take on this. It really depends on the size and scale of the firm. But when you get into the 50, $100+ billion range, it's absolutely unquestionably more of a risk. Not even a debate. Because I totally hear Meghan's point, about working with the divorce advisor, to put together that content and tell the story. But what happens when you've acquired your 17th divorce advisor? You're creating an extreme amount of competition and inconsistency. And I'm not sure that there's any marketer on this podcast or for any of your guests in the other seasons that would raise their hand and say inconsistency is a great tactic in marketing.
I don't disagree with Justin at all. I agree. I think it's taking the common and just making sure you have a personal take on it. Yeah.
100%. And I think, Meghan, to completely agree with you, like personalization at scale, customization at scale, mass customization, if you will, is the North Star for the mega RIAs.
100%.
But I go back to my early career, right? When I'm working with the $200, $300, $400 billion firm where all they do is work with divorcees and it's one rainmaker. All they do is working with technologists. All they're doing is working with McDonald's franchisees, specific message to specific audience, hyper customized, hyper personal. This is like the David Goliath. This is how you beat the big firms, is by being super, super specific. In my firm and in Tara's firm and in firms of this size and scale, we can't put a piece of content on the homepage of our website about how we service dentists. Can't do that, right? What's that going to do to the next M&A candidate? But when you're a $200 million shop and all you do is work dentists, your entire website should be about dentists. It really depends on the deal.
Well, and I appreciate that comment. And Jack, so responding to that, your firm is at a different scale than Tara's, for example. How does that play in terms of being able to sort of have the firm voice, but balance it with an advisor's personality or personal brand or their voice in terms of that level? Where does the customization stop? Like how far down do you go?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the merriment of Justin and Meghan, your two perspectives there, right? Because it's every advisor in the digital space or even their own local community is not going to be able to tell the same story with the same kind of relevance to say, yeah, I definitely feel like I could trust them, or I feel like I'm going to have another conversation, because we've all just lived different experiences or are really confident talking about different things. And so on one level, it's, okay, yes, you can own that conversation because you're the only one within this firm that is excited about that is really well knowledged. We can support that on the one-to-one or one-to-few level. But then no matter what, at the firm level, like, what are the fundamental truths that's going to happen, right? What's that overall first step for any prospect that comes in? What's that experience? That needs to be replicated across every single advisor. You're just looking at kind of the lenses or levers that are being pulled to bring them into that home office experience, right? And so you do want to allow advisors to use their own personal angles and expressions and emotions to bring people in, because I think that's deeply authentic and important. But then also at the firm level say, okay, and this is when it turns into a firm conversation, right? They're going to start at this process and you're going to relatively have the same conversation right now about planning. Like we call it the GPS process, the goals planning statement process. It's like a written contract between the client and the advisor about, what are your dreams and aspirations, how we're going to get there. And then if we all agree that this works, this is the process we're going to use. That's a fundamental truth. That's not going to change based on you're working with us in Traverse City or with the founders back in Dedham. Like, that's the same process no matter what. The investments you're going to get are the exact same thing no matter what. But the way that you interact with one another, that's really where you have that layer of personalization, because that needs to be authentic. People can smell inauthenticity super quick. Super, super quick.
Jack, this is a perfect segue to the next question. I want to start with Tara on this next one, because you talk about authenticity, which speaks also to the human connection, the human touch. In our show notes, both Justin and Tara had said a couple things that had sort of surprising outside return or underrated were things like Tara talked about having 60-second videos that people did that were a little more personal in nature. And Justin talked about events and having out. And so to me, that's underlines a point, like, people want to feel connected to the firm they're working with. And even if that firm is a multi-billion-dollar valuation enterprise, or it is a mom and pop version of an RIA firm, right? They still want to feel that connection, right? And so, Tara, starting with you, when you think about this, those things that are overperforming in marketing, like, what do you think is about these what are called human touch marketing pieces that drive it for you, and how do you make that work in an environment as of scale like yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I would agree with what everyone said in terms of, the customization happens at the individual level. The brand is sacrosanct, and I think, what we've seen is, look, we put out incredible investment content, right? Not knocking any of that. People are busy; they are going a million miles an hour, and we need to reach them and we need to touch them. And this is a human business. And so I think any time where we've been able to put, someone on video, and the more casual, honestly, the better. We've just seen really good ROI for those types of assets. And it makes sense. People can listen while they're doing other things. They can consume it in small. The concept of small and digestible being, really strong and appealing is not a new, right? That's not a new concept. People don't have time to read a white paper every week. And so we're really leaning into that. I think the revelation for us has been, we don't have to wait for a multi-camera shoot to make it happen. And so bringing on, tools and vendors that help us do kind of things in a little bit of a scrappier way and not letting the perfect get in the way of the good is what's helped us be nimble as we're growing and things get more complex and more bureaucratic as you get larger as an institution, but still kind of bringing on tools that help us stay nimble and bring kind of the humanity and put the advisor as they should be, right, face forward in our marketing has served us really well over the last couple of years. And so we're going to continue to lean into that.
I think that's amazing you're able to do that. And Justin, you had the comment about events. I saw something on LinkedIn. I was teasing you earlier about the wine tasting, but it seems like you really have your hands in trying to bring to life different experiences, both for colleagues and clients. Tell us where you think you're getting outsized return on that time investment.
Yeah, for sure. I think this answer is super tied to my life and personal experience. I spent my entire career in this space, very siloed in digital marketing and digital lead gen. And my professional why was proving to myself that I could ring that cash register without any human touch or any human connection. And a degree of it, right, via the digital channels, but there was never an in-person component, full stop. And having done that for a long time and having been able to build the mechanisms and machinery where I shouldn't say this, and I'm really grateful, right, for the success. It's expected. The success is expected because I just know how it works now. I personally am more interested in the things that I haven't done. And in this role, right, it's given me the opportunity to really spread my wings and work on things that were never in my realm before, right? Because I've always worked with people who are way more talented than me, like Tara, who have been able to own these things. And it made no sense because we're specialists, right? And I specialize in my thing and others specialize in their thing. And in my environment, coming into a 3-person marketing team, which in the last 6 months, we've grown to a 12-person marketing team, it's been super fun to try the things that I've never been able to try before. And again, completely my personal perspective, this is not even a business-centric comment. To tie it to my personal interests and passions, for me to be able to show up in my best every day, I need to have a bit of fun. And I love Japanese sake. I've studied it for 8 years. I've got advanced sommelier certification. And we host this super cool thing at Lido called the Client Advisory Council, where we bring together our most engaged clients, and we basically take them on a crazy cool vacation. And in return for that, we get to ask them tons of questions about what's working and what's not working about the business. And as part of that, we rented out Nobu Malibu a couple weeks ago, and I decided to give a sake lesson just for fun. And the most gratifying part of that, right, is we build this super cool experience. We create a setting where the advisors are able to work their magic in a one-to-one setting, bringing together clients and prospects and people from different parts, right, of our firm's ecosystem. And the most gratifying thing to me is when a client leans over and he's like, Justin, I just closed this prospect for you. I got it. And they're so proud because they love their experience with the firm so much to be doing business development for no return, just because they're associating their experience with our firm, with themselves and their personality to a level that they're going above and beyond and doing their own business development work, right? To my earlier point about turning a customer to an evangelist, and they're proud of it. And it has literally nothing to do with money because they don't need money. And that doesn't happen on webinars. That happens when we bring a super cool group together in a super cool setting introduce them to an experience that's super unique. I've always I learned really early in my career from some smart people, don't put on events where there's going to be somebody who is way more proficient than everybody else. Put them on a mechanical bull together. Create this moment that's deeply uncomfortable, but weird and fun. And this group will be connected, and that connection can yield outsized returns. And it's very interesting and fun.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think so. The two of you hit nicely on that human touch piece. In the interest of time, I want to jump to a question. This is another bomb I'll throw out there, and I'm going to pick on Jack because I think he has an opinion, because I know his dad's involved a lot with AI initiatives. But has AI raised the bar for marketers or actually lowered it?
Oh,
chew
that's
on
a
that
good one.
Well, just think about it. I have a lot of opinions here too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it comes down, in my perspective at least, is there's so much that I would have never been able to do because of AI. I just posted about it today. I've gotten into vibe coding, if you ever heard of it, where I originally trained as a mechanical engineer, and I failed within 2 years because I couldn't code. I couldn't build in the digital space that others were really proficient at. If I could be an engineer in the 50s, I'd be amazing, because it was so physical and so grounded. But because it moved into coding, I couldn't really do it. Right? I reached a level of mathematics. I'm like, cool, I'm done. But now with I love Claude for it. It's such a strong coder where I can picture what I want and I can build it in 5 minutes, right? And then that could lead me down a path much quicker than the old days of, well, let me talk to a dev team. Let me see if they can do it. Let's scope it out. Let's invest it. Let's do the whole thing. And then you get to the point you go, actually, that wasn't what I needed. What I really needed was this, right? So the speed that I can iterate, think, create, share with others for feedback or ideas has massively changed. It's been fantastic, but it doesn't change what you put into it. Really reflects what you get out of it. And so if you have individuals that aren't very creative or aren't very well versed in the tactics or don't really understand how to problem solve, then if you throw it into a chatbot or whatever system you want to use, that outcome's not going to work, right? Because you don't have the context and the experience to understand what's going to play well and what's not. It's the same thing when you work with an agency, especially in our space, right? That's amazing in, let's say, consumer software sales. And they go, well, we could bring this to you. And you go, well, it looks beautiful, but it doesn't convert the same way because you haven't really understood our space in the same. So I think it's an amazing time just for creation and brainstorming and getting speed of output. But you still need those fundamental truths and understandings as a marketer, as a biz dev, as whatever it might be. It just changes that, day 1 to day 5, right? It's not, no, next quarter will look. Next year will look. That's kind of my take on it. I'm pretty excited by it.
Meghan, you're building a marketing team now. Obviously, you brought on a key new hire. What role does AI play as an accomplice to getting things done at this stage?
So I think it raises the bar only in that it can get some of the basics done so that we can focus on better stuff, right? We're updating, like a super simple example, updating our website, right? We can use AI to standardize bios so nobody's doing that for 3 days, so that we can focus on something that's way more important. I said earlier to Tara talking about locales, my Colgate kid is constantly telling me that AI is killing our world, so I'm not allowed to use it at all. I think that's probably head in the sand. But college kids know everything. But I think that it's use it for efficiency so that we can all be better, right? For the stuff that's really a lot more important.
Very cool. So, all right, we're getting to the point where I want you to start thinking about your parting shots, and as you get ready for the parting shot, I want you to frame it in terms of what's going to separate the winning RIAs in terms of marketing and growth over the next 3 years from those that don't. So think about that for a second. But while you're ruminating in the back of your mind, I'll ask one question. Call this for the home team. People ask me all the time this question, and I always feel self-serving when I answer it because I run an agency. What's the secret to working successfully with a PR or marketing agency in your mind from the CMO's chair? Tara, I'll pick on you because I know you've had a long-standing relationship with an agency, not mine, but whatever. What is it like?
I have views on this, Joe. Look, I think a successful agency relationship is treating them like part of the team. no barriers. They know everything. You're with them all the time. You bring them into meetings, and they are fully an extension of the firm. I think that is the only way to go, and it's the way that you get the best out of those types of relationships.
And then, what's your take, Meghan? I know you walked into a new role and there's an agency there, so you might still be getting your feet wet. I'm sure you had an agency at Hightower. So, what are sort of the success signals in terms of working on the agency?
I completely turn PR over to an agency and I think it absolutely should. I think those media relationships need to be maintained by an agency. And then beyond that, for marketing, I think it has to be a project complete. It can't be just, bits and pieces. That's a fail. So it has to be a complete project that the agency has complete ownership of and can turn it back as a whole. That's where I think that's a win.
Jack or Justin, you have any thoughts on how to maximize working with an agency from your perspective?
Yeah. I have pretty strong thoughts on it. And I completely agree with Tara that it needs to be integrated with the team, but how it's integrated and what's integrated is very unique to the team composition in itself. And I had a really nice call with our president yesterday where he met all these new team members we're hiring for the first time. And he called me and he's I really like your team. You have a really, really good team. What was your priorities in hiring the people, right? And bringing on the people you hired. And my response was, first, I'm trying to hire just really good humans that are really nice to be around, that have a good understanding of their why, whether it's to be an individual contributor forever or to take my job as the CMO. Both are really exciting. Two, I'm hiring for potential, right? Because a hire is not a short-term thing, right? This is an investment in a person, hopefully for a really long time. I'm hiring for potential. And then three, a bit of experience, right, is nice too, but that's the third priority. So the agency comes in, right, tied to that number three, where I'm light on specialization, where I'm light on experience. This is where I need to bring in the subject matter experts to round out the team and then work backwards to fill those high potential people with specialized, with that really specialized knowledge. And that's how I think about it, right? I'm not going to have an agency going around working with the advisors, right, on their growth plans. I'm not going to have an agency working with my M&A team probably directly, right, on that story. Where I'm definitely going to have an agency is in helping me do custom record types, right? Or as Meghan said, in very specific, right, PR outreach, or in making sure that I'm in the absolute most cutting edge with the AI tools. So I try and I'm a modular guy, right? I like to hire different agencies who are all absolute specialists and experts in what they do, because that knowledge transfers back to the team. It fills that potential. And that's just a gratifying environment, and it works too.
I love it. Jack, your chance to feedback on this one. And full disclosure, Jack and I worked together. He was a client of mine in his previous gig. So if he says anything bad, you know who he's talking about. So,
Joe, your team was fantastic to work with. It was just in a different parallel. We were in fintech. It was great, though. We were empowering advisors together. I think yes to all the points you just heard, but I think it comes down to, from a planning level, leadership level, what are your goals for the short and long term, and where is that agency going to provide value? I think there's so much kind of stalling in agencies often, where it's, okay, we've gone off track or the plans change. Then you have to figure out, where does this agency fit now? I think that often happens in loops where you go, okay, we were so focused on this agency was great. But now, okay, they're a little lost, and it's not their fault that they're lost, right? But now they can't do the job to the best of their ability because they don't have that, large leadership pushing them forward. And so, I like the way everyone framed it here, where it's keep them focused on a loop, supplement your team, where they're going to provide the most value, versus, well, we have an agency, I think they can help, right? That's the worst place to be, because that's not going to yield the best results. Start at the top and work your way back and build that team around you.
Awesome. Great answers for anyone listening to this. I think that'll be some good guideposts for those to think about how to make it work. So the last question. So this is the parting shot framed from this point of view of, what's going to separate the winning RIAs when it comes to growth and marketing in the next 3 years from those that aren't doing well. And Meghan, you batted last in the intro, so you get to go first in the outro.
Actually, I'm going to build a little bit on what Justin just said. I think, and this may sound small, but the winning RIAs are going to be the best leadership teams that are working really cohesively together and having the right people. It is shocking to me. It makes such an impact. Having strong leadership working really closely together and a lack of toxicity, I think that's what's going to win. That's what's going to jump forward, because it's felt up and down. I think it's important.
Awesome. Tara, how would you answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the most successful firms are the ones that are bringing the marketers to the table, trusting their advice and their expertise, and treating them like thought partners. They will get the best outcomes if they do that.
Terrific. Jack?
Yeah, I think building off Tara, what you said earlier about don't let perfect get in the way of good and great, like leading with people, leading with authenticity, and making sure to create the opportunities to break down those barriers of this is not a large firm. These are people within your communities. How you show up in the digital and physical space, that's going to set you apart from anyone else. No one really remembers what firm their advisor is part of. They remember their advisor. Let's focus on that.
And Justin?
Yeah, for me, it's investment first and foremost. If you're not willing to take this seriously and make the investment and do this seriously, you're going to lose by default because it will be an unfair fight. But beyond that, because there are firms that make huge investments that don't do so well, it's patience, but patience grounded in optimization. Right. And being able to understand that you've made the investment. This is not a quick 2-3 month thing. This is always on 365, 24/7 investment. And for the CEOs and the board to be able to take a little bit of a step back and not be looking for this CAC to ROI in 2 seconds, but more so to be looking, are they learning new things? Are they trying new things? Is the ball moving down the field? Are we making progress? And if you can ground the patience and progress and then wrap a nice dollar investment around it, you're going to be good.
Well, these are all fantastic perspectives. I would add, when you think about what's going to separate the winners from losers, I think a big part of that is those that can balance the needs and demands, frankly, for firms to grow and tell their stories and have a brand voice, with also the reality that they stay innovative. So I think some firms get caught so much on answer, what's in front of them, the needs there. They're not thinking about what's going to come next. And the firms that invest in teams and leadership where they can not only meet, so one of you can maybe meet the current demands. Two of you you need a team to have time to not only address the current things, but look around the corner and making sure the firms are prepared for what's next. I think nobody saw 18 months ago the relevance of AI search, for example. It's now omnipresent. What's that next thing going to be? So that's my thought. I think you need to be able to invest enough to make sure you can answer the now and the later altogether. So again, we're going to leave it there. The four of you were tremendous. I want to say thank you again to Justin Barish, the CMO at Lido Advisors, Tara Ryan, the Chief Marketing Officer at Cerity Partners, Meghan McCartan from Composition Wealth, of course, Jack Casady, the Marketing Director at Beck. Four of you, thanks so much for joining. This concludes season 2 of Marketing Matchup. Stay tuned, folks, for more.
Thanks for hosting, Joe. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for listening to Marketing Matchup, a production of Gregory. If you like what you heard, please listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.